Hey, you. You're finally awake.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Although we had Christmas is long gone, I decided to bring the spooky season forward as I'm going to be talking about some of the scariest games on the NES. Yes, fair enough, if we're looking at the NES now, it's nowhere near as scary as games on the PS4 or PS5 for example, but back then they still had the ability to scare our pants off. So today I'm going to be giving my thoughts on what I think are the scariest games for the NES. As always, if there are ones I need to talk about, put them in the comments below, or you just want to talk about these games, I want to hear from you. If you think I deserve it, please hit that like button as well as the subscribe button and the notification bell to be told when there's new videos. We've got the weekly podcast, and we've got a free Discord, and I'd love to see you in the group. Now let's get into it, shall we? The scariest games on the NES. Shadowgate. Originally a Macintosh point-and-click adventure, the NES port is a masterpiece of atmosphere and dread. While games like Castlevania, which may appear on this list, used horror as an aesthetic for action, Shadowgate was one of the few games on the console that actually tried to scare you. It didn't rely on jump scares or reflexes, it used your own imagination and curiosity against you. You are the last of a line of kings, tasked with entering Castle Shadowgate to stop the Warlock Lord from summoning the Behemoth. A first-person point-and-click adventure, you navigate through rooms by clicking on doors, picking up items and solving puzzles. You have a set of verbs, look, take, use, open, etc., and a cursor shaped like a skeletal hand. Every single object in the castle can potentially be interacted with. Shadowgate is terrifying because it makes the player feel fragile, unwelcome, and constantly watched. Every time you die, which is often, the screen transitions to a haunting image of a cloaked skeleton, the Grim Reaper, laughing at you. The text reads, "It's a sad thing that your adventures have ended here." This game became a trauma for a generation of kids. The Grim Reaper isn't just a game over screen, it feels like an active character who is mocking your failure. Because the graphics were limited to static 8-bit sprites, the game relied on text to convey the horror. When you die, the game describes your demise in graphic detail that the graphics couldn't show. The slime rises up and engulfs your body, dissolving it in seconds. Your body explodes as you plunge into the lava, and quotes like "you're burnt to the bone." Your brain fills the gaps the pixels can't, making the deaths feel more real. Now you've got to keep a torch lit at all times. As you play, your torch slowly flickers out. When it starts to get low, the music changes to a frantic, stressful theme that pulses like a heartbeat. If your torch goes out before you light a new one, you stumble in the dark, break your neck, and die. Jesus Christ. This adds a layer of time management horror to every puzzle. You don't just have to solve the riddle, you have to do it before the darkness swallows you. In most NES games, a sword is a weapon and a potion is a buff. In Shadowgate, the game invites you to kill yourself. You could use sword on yourself and eat poisonous items. You can open a door that leads to a vacuum of space. The game feels hostile. It isn't a playground, it's a trap designed by a warlock who wants you dead. The castle is full of things that also do nothing but unnerve you. Skeletons of previous adventures litter the floor. Mirrors shatter when you look at them. Eyes watch you from the darkness of a sewer. These details don't always lead to a puzzle, they're simply there to build an atmosphere of oppressive loneliness. Shadowgate is a logic horror game. It taught players to be afraid of the next screen. It turned the act of opening a door into a life or death gamble. Even today, the sound of a torch flickering and the sight of that grinning skeleton can trigger a sense of genuine unease in anyone who played it as a child. Sweet Home. Developed by Capcom for the Famicom, this game never officially came to the West due to its intense gore and disturbing themes. It's legendary not just for being scary, but being the direct ancestor of Resident Evil. In fact, Resident Evil was originally intended to be a remake of this game before becoming its own thing. A documentary crew enters the abandoned mansion to photograph lost pictures. They're immediately trapped inside a vengeful ghost of the lady who lived there and must find a way out. It's an RPG with turn-based battles, but played inside a single, massive, interconnected haunted house. You control 5 characters, each with unique essential items. A lighter, a camera, a medical kit, a vacuum, and a lock pit. If you want to survive, you've got to split them into small groups and coordinate their movements across the mansion. Sweet Home pioneered survival horror years before the term even existed. It creates a level of tension that was unheard of on 8-bit hardware. In most NES RPGs, if a character dies, you go to a church or use a feather to revive them. In Sweet Home, dead is dead. If your cameraman gets melted by acid or decapitated by a ghost, he stays dead. Not only is this emotionally heavy, but it's a mechanical disaster as you lose his unique item and his inventory slots. This game doesn't end though, but it becomes significantly harder, forcing you to find replacement items scattered near their corpses. The game pushed the Famicom to its absolute limit with the gore cinema cutscenes. You'll see characters get burnt alive, soldiers with half their faces missing, and spirits that transform into rotting corpses mid-battle. One of the most famous and terrifying moments involves a projector that shows a grainy, flickering image of a baby being incinerated, a plot point that was way too dark for Nintendo of America in 1989. Yeah, it's a grim story. I've finished this game. Very, very grim. Each character can carry 2 items, plus 1 weapon. This sounds like a minor annoyance, but it's actually a brilliant horror mechanic. You're constantly forced to make agonizing choices. Do I leave this life-saving potion, or do I keep the wooden plank I need to cross that hole in the floor? This creates a constant feeling of vulnerability and unpreparedness. Every time you open a door in Sweet Home, the screen cuts to a slow creaking animation of the door swinging open into pitch blackness. This was designed to build suspense and hide loading times, a technique that was stolen and used in the Resident Evil games. It made every new room feel like a potential death trap. The game doesn't just tell you why the house is haunted, it makes you find out. You discover blood-stained notes, diary entries from previous victims, and hidden messages in the pictures that reveal a tragic, disturbing backstory involving a mother's grief and insanity. It turns the mansion itself into a character that slowly revels in its own rot. If one of your small little group gets pulled into a battle they can't win, you can use the call command. The game then switches to your other team members, and you have to physically race through the mansion to reach them before your friends are killed. Hearing the battle music intensify while you're frantically navigating dark hallways creates a level of panic that few modern games can match. Sweet Home is the missing link of horror history. It took the standard RPG format and injected it with a sense of claustrophobia and consequence that changed gaming forever. It's not just scary for an NES game, it's a genuinely stressful, high-stakes horror masterpiece that still holds up today. Maniac Mansion. While it's famously a parody of B-movie horror tropes, the NES version carries a specific unsettling energy. It was many kids' first experience with a game where you could actually be murdered, not just lose a life, but removed from the game in a cold, permanent way. It's a game that balances goofy humour with a genuine sense of being trapped in a house with a family of homicidal maniacs. Dave's girlfriend Sandy has been kidnapped and brainwashed by Dr. Fred Edison. You choose 2 of Dave's friends to break into the mansion and rescue her before Dr. Fred starts experiments. The game invented the term cutscene. Periodically, the game will cut away from your characters to show what the Edisons are doing in other rooms, often showing them plotting to catch you or becoming increasingly unstable. You can switch between your 3 chosen characters at any time, and this is essential for puzzles, like having one person ring the doorbell to distract a family member while the other sneaks in the back. Despite its humour, Maniac Mansion is a stressful masterclass in stalking horror. In most NES games, enemies follow a simple back and forth path. In Maniac Mansion, the Edisons roam the house. You might be searching the kitchen when the game suddenly cuts to Nurse Edna saying she's hungry. You then have a limited amount of time to hide your character before she physically enters the room. If she sees you, she chases you. If she catches you, it's off to the dungeon, or worse. Like Sweet Home, deaths in Maniac Mansion are final. If you make a fatal mistake, that character is gone. The game just doesn't reset, it shows a tombstone in the front yard with your character's name on it. Seeing your friends' graves while you try and finish the game with the survivors is a heavy, chilling visual for an 8-bit game. The game is famous for its dark, emergent horror. If you play as Sid or Razor, you can put Weird Ed's pet hamster in the microwave and, well, the game lets you do it. If you then get the remains back to Ed, he doesn't just get mad, he kills your character on the spot. This level of player-driven cruelty and immediate lethal consequence was shocking in 1990. Each character has their own theme music, but many rooms in the mansion are dead silent. The only sound you'll hear is the rhythmic clack 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 of your cursor. The silence makes the sudden intruder alert music feel like a jump scare every time it triggers. Maniac Mansion is a mean game. It's possible to win to use an item incorrectly or let a character die, making the game impossible to win without you even realising it. This creates a psychological fear of the unknown. Did I just screw up? Am I a walking dead man? You're constantly worried that your next move might be your last. As the clock ticks, the cutscenes show Dr. Fred becoming more erratic under the influence of the purple meteor. The time limit isn't a ticking clock on the screen, it's the visible mental breakdown of the villain. The sense that Sandy is in an operating chair just a few floors below creates a persistent, gnawing anxiety. Maniac Mansion is a cat and mouse thriller. It turned a point-and-click adventure into a stealth horror experience where the house feels like it's closing in on you. It's funny until you hear the sound of a door opening behind you, and then it's pure 8-bit panic. Friday the 13th. This could be seen as the king of the panic simulator. Developed by Atlas and published by LJN, the game is often maligned for its difficulty and confusing map, but it's one of the most effective stress horror games on the NES. It captures the feeling of a slasher movie better than almost any game of the era because it doesn't let you be the hunter, it makes you the prey. You control 6 camp counselors, each with different speed and jump heights at Camp Crystal Lake. Your goal is to protect 15 children and defeat Jason Voorhees 3 times over the course of 3 days. The game switches between a side-scrolling woods view and a pseudo 3D first-person view whenever you enter cabin, and a high-pitched frantic beeping sound triggers whenever Jason's attacking a counsellor or a child in a different part of the map. Friday the 13th is scary because it creates a constant unyielding sense of urgency and helplessness. Unlike almost any other NES boss, Jason isn't just waiting through the end of level, he is roaming the map in real time. You'll be walking through the woods, minding your own business, and Jason will suddenly leap out behind a tree or emerge from the lake. There's no warning, the fucker just turns up, and his theme immediately spikes your heart rate. The first person cabin sections are pure dread. You walk through dark rooms, lighting fireplaces to find items, and at any moment the fucker can suddenly appear in the room with you. Because the perspective is fixed, he often pops up right in your face, accompanied by a loud, jarring sound effect. It's one of the earliest and most effective jump scares in console history. When the alarm does beep, you have to open the map and see where Jason is. If he's on the other side of the lake, you have to physically sprint across the map, dodging zombies and crows while a timer counts down. If you don't make it in time, that counsellor or child is permanently dead, and the sound of beeping is the sound of pure anxiety. As your counsellors die off, the game becomes increasingly bleak. You start off with 6, and once you're down to your last one, usually a slow character like Paul or Mary, the game feels impossible. You're trapped on a deserted camp with a supernatural killer who is faster, stronger, and tougher than you. The feeling of being the last one left is incredibly oppressive. On day 1, Jason is manageable. On day 2, he gets faster. On day 3, he becomes a terrifying blur speed monster that can drain your health in seconds. The game tracks the passage of time, and as the sun goes down, the colours shift to dark purples and blacks, signalling that the safety of the day is over. If you explore the hidden caves or the lake, you can find the floating severed head of Jason's mother, Pamela. It's a grotesque, unexpected sprite that flies around the screen attacking you. It adds a layer of ghost story weirdness to the slasher formula that keeps the player off balance. Friday the 13th on the NES is a game about resource management panic. It's not a fun platformer, it's a grueling endurance test. It's scary because it forces you to make impossible choices. Do I save this group of kids, or do I get the torch so I can actually see Jason in the dark? It's the ultimate 8-bit stress dream. Uninvited. Developed by ICOM Simulations, the same team behind Shadowgate, this NES port traded high fantasy castles for a decaying modern-day mansion. It is arguably the most settling game of the NES point-and-click trilogy because the horror feels more intimate, hallucinatory, and wrong. You wake up in a crashed car in front of a mysterious mansion. Your sister has been taken inside. You have to navigate the house, solve puzzles, and find her before the evil of the house consumes you. Much like Shadowgate, you use a cursor and verbs to interact with the environment. You can collect spells, keys, and strange artifacts while trying to avoid traps. Unlike the cold stone work of Shadowgate, Uninvited feels like a place where people once lived, making the bloodstains and hauntings feel like a violation of a home. Uninvited is scary because it leans into the supernatural uncanny, the feeling that everything you see is a trap or distorted vision of reality. The Scarlett O'Hara jump scare is one of the most famous moments in NES history. You enter a hallway and see what looks like a beautiful woman in a red dress with her back turned to you. When you tap her on the shoulder or try to speak to her, she turns around to reveal a grinning, fleshless skull with a piercing screech. For a kid in '99, it was a genuine toss-the-controller moment. For me, it was like, oh yeah. In one room, there's a large mirror, and if you look into it, you see your own reflection. However, as you stay in the room, the reflection starts to distort and rot, eventually showing a demonic entry. It's a classic trope, but executed with such effective 8-bit art, and it makes the simple act of checking your surroundings feel dangerous. Uninvited has a unique way of handling the game over. If you take too long or get cursed, the text descriptions start to change. You start to feel heavy and your thoughts become cloudy, and eventually the game tells you you're becoming a part of the house. It's a slow motion transformation that feels more terrifying than a quick death because you can feel it happening. The game features strange creatures that defy logic. There's a tiny red-headed dancing demon that appears in various rooms. It's not necessarily an immediate threat, but its erratic movements and the creepy jaunty music that accompanies it creates a sense of wrongness. It feels like the house is taunting your sanity. The NES soundtrack for Uninvited is minimalist and unsettling. It uses long periods of silence broken only by the clicking of your cursor, which makes the sudden shrill sound effects of a ghost appearing feel 10 times louder. The death music is jarring jangle that reinforces the idea that your soul has been lost. Much like its siblings, Uninvited is full of suicide items. You can pick up a cursed pendant that slowly drains your life. You can open a box that releases a ghost that follows you until you die. The game punishes curiosity, forcing you to treat every object with a level of suspicion that borders on paranoia. Uninvited is a ghost house simulator that makes you feel like a fever dream. It doesn't rely on monsters jumping out of closets, it relies on the player's fear of the wrong thing in the right place. It's a masterclass in building dread through text, sounds, and few perfectly timed grotesque images. Digital Devil Story Megami Tensei. Developed by Atlus and published by Namco for the Famicom, this is the origin of the massive Shin Megami Tensei and Persona franchises. Based on novels, it tells a dark techno-horror story that was far more mature and disturbing than anything Nintendo was allowing in the West at the time. Akemi Nakajima, a high school genius, creates a computer program that can summon demons from the digital realm in the real world. Really? I was like Digimon gone wrong? Who'd have thought that'd be a good idea? Things go horribly wrong, no shit, when demons start slaughtering people, and Nakajima, along with his classmate Yukumo, must enter a massive demonic labyrinth to stop Lucifer. Just, okay, fine, whatever. It's a first-person dungeon crawler, where you navigate grid-based corridors. The game invented the monster taming genre. Years before Pokemon, this game allowed you to talk to your enemies, bribe them, and convince them to join your party. You could even fuse two demons together to create a more powerful, horrifying hybrid. Megami Tensei is scary because it feels like a forbidden text, a game that shouldn't exist on a family console. The game uses a first-person view for exploration, but the corridors are claustrophobic and repetitive. You're constantly surrounded by stone walls and darkness, never knowing if the next step will trigger an encounter with a mythological nightmare. The limited draw distance makes it feel like the walls are closing in on you. The demon sprites are unsettling. They aren't cute monsters, they're grotesque interpretations of gods, demons, and urban legends. You'll face rotting corpses, multi-headed beasts, and entities that look genuinely demonic. Seeing these high-contrast detailed sprites pop out of the darkness was a huge jump in fear factor over the typical Dragon Quest slimes. This is one of the hardest games on the Famicom. You're constantly running out of resources, your demons requiring energy to stay alive, and death is around every corner. The fear doesn't just come from the jump scare, but from the crushing weight of survival. Being 10 floors deep in a dungeon with no health and low energy for your demons is a level of stress few 8-bit games could produce. The game's premise, that computers are a gateway to hell, was a very modern cyberpunk horror concept from 1987. It suggested that the devices in our own homes could be used to summon ancient evil. This blend of science fiction and the devil gave the game an evil edge that makes it feel like you're playing something dangerous, and bear in mind, manga and anime back in those days was absolutely wild. The game features a full lunar cycle that affects demon behaviour. On a full moon, demons become agitated, impossible to talk to, and significantly stronger. Watching the moon icon slowly turn to a full moon while you're lost in a dungeon creates a ticking clock of dread. The music is also heavy on bass and minor keys, creating a droning industrial atmosphere. It doesn't just sound like a heroic adventure, it sounds like a desperate struggle through the abyss. The sound effects for attacks and demon fusions are crunchy and harsh, reinforcing the Digital Devil aesthetic. Digital Devil's story Megami Tensei is a black metal RPG. It took the fantasy tropes of the 80s and dragged them through the dirt, blood, and computer code of a modern nightmare. It's scary because it's uncompromising, intellectually dark, and makes the player feel like a small, fragile human in a world of ancient, uncaring gods. And finally, good old Castlevania. While later game in the series became Metroidvania focused on exploration, the NES original was a pure, linear descent into the 1930s Universal horror movie. It's a scary game not because of what it shows you, because of how it controls, let's be honest. Its mechanical rigidity to make the player feel the clumsiness of fear in a house of traps. You are Simon Belmont, an 11th century vampire hunter armed with a vampire killer whip. You enter Dracula's demonic castle, which reshapes itself every century to slay the count. Castlevania is a celebration of classic horror. You fight monsters like Frankenstein's monster, the Mummy, the Grim Reaper, Medusa, and finally Dracula himself. I know the Grim Reaper's death. I know, I'm just saying it's a classic-based horror thing. Alright, don't come after me at the comments, you know what I'm talking about. I know you fight two mummies, alright, I know. I'm saying you fight the mummy, a mummy, mummies, we get it. Move on. It's a precision platformer where every jump is a commitment, it really is, and every swing of your whip has a calculated delay. Castlevania is scary because it's unforgiving. It creates a specific type of high-stakes horror where the environment is just as lethal as the monsters. In most games, like Mario, you can change your direction in mid-air. In Castlevania, once you jump, you're locked into that trajectory. This creates a terrifying sense of vulnerability. If a Medusa head flies onto the screen while you're mid-jump, you can't dodge it. You're gonna hit it, and you're gonna fall. It forces a level of defensive anxiety where you're constantly scanning the screen for threats before you dare to move. Now, the knockback pitfall is the most famous horror mechanic in the game. When Simon takes damage, he doesn't just flicker, he recoils backwards several feet. Since many of the game's platforms are surrounded by bottomless pits, a single bat flying into you can send you flying to your death. This makes every small enemy feel like a potential instant death trigger, so keeping your stress levels peaked even when the screen looks completely empty. Simon Belmont moves with deliberate heavy weight. There is a startup animation for his whip, and you can't attack and move at the same time. This lack of agility makes the player feel human and fragile. You're not superhuman, you're a man with a piece of leather trying to survive an onslaught of a supernatural speed. The boss fight with Death is a legendary gaming nightmare. He doesn't just attack you, he fills the screen with spinning sickles that appear at random. It feels chaotic, overwhelming and claustrophobic. For many kids, reaching stage 5 and hearing that screeching boss music was the moment the game shifted from fun challenge to pure horror. For 1986, the visuals were incredibly gritty. Instead of bright colours, you had decrepit brick walls, tattered curtains and backgrounds filled with skeletons and tortured statues. The transition from the sunny courtyard into the dark watery cavern to the basement felt like a genuine descent into a place where you weren't supposed to be. The final stages take place in the clock tower, full of moving gears and narrow ledges. The combination of the ticking clock theme and the verticality of the levels creates a sense of vertigo. One wrong step or a flying enemy and the entire climb is reset by a fall into the abyss. Castlevania is a precision horror game. It uses stiff controls and punishing physics to simulate the feeling of being overwhelmed by the supernatural. It's scary because it demands perfection in an environment designed to make you fail. It turned the monster movie into a test of nerves. And that's it, my choice into the scariest horror games on the NES. Let me know what you think of this list and let me know if there's ones I need to talk about. Until then, I'll see you all in a few days. My name's been Danny, take care of yourself, bye bye.